My name is Dr Ranj and I'm here today with Dr David Gilligan to talk about how lung cancer can be treated stage by stage. What actually is lung cancer? David, what are the sorts of symptoms that lung cancer can cause? How would you test for lung cancer?
Side effects of immunotherapy are different again.
How do chemotherapy and radiotherapy differ?